There will be no politicization at the FBI? Kash Patel said those words under oath just weeks ago. What you're about to see is Senator Deborah Ross methodically proving he lied. She's exposing how Patel fired decorated agents for working cases Trump didn't like, interrogated FBI veterans about their votes, and turned America's premier law enforcement agency into a political weapon. This isn't just another hearing, it's democracy on trial.
I'm going a little out of order here because I'm going to pursue some of the things that you were just talking to Mr. Fry about and remind you about your confirmation hearing. At your confirmation hearing in January, you said under oath, and I quote, "There will be no politicization at the FBI. There will be no retributive actions taken by the FBI should I be confirmed." And in your written response to the Senate questionnaire, you said, I quote, "Personnel decisions shall be based on performance and adherence to the law. And every FBI employee will be held to the absolute same standard, and no one will be terminated for case assignments." So I want to just go through a couple of scenarios with you to get a sense of whether you think these are examples of politicization of the FBI or making decisions based on the performance and adherence to the law. So, first question. Would hiring FBI agents, analysts, and supervisors from only one political party being politicization of the FBI or making personnel decisions based on performance and adherence to the law?
We don't ask FBI people, applicants, where their political parties are.
Mr. Patel, do you ask FBI applicants who they voted for?
The FBI does not.
Are you aware that in the lawsuit that Mr. Driscoll filed against you and the FBI, he was asked who he voted for?
Since that lawsuit has been filed and it's ongoing litigation, I'm not able to comment.
Well, but it also means that you just said that what happened in his situation didn't happen. So we will go on to the next question. Let me ask you an even easier one. Does firing agents for working on the cases that they were assigned to and that the president didn't like, is that politicization of the FBI or making personnel decisions based on performance and adherence to the law?
The FBI doesn't terminate anyone based on case assignments alone.
Has the FBI ever been sued by somebody who felt that they were terminated based on case assignments?
In the entire history of the FBI, I'm sure they have.
No, since your tenure.
I'm sure there's ongoing litigation.
Yes. In fact, there is ongoing litigation. And in fact, people have been asked who they voted for. And in fact, you are running an FBI for the President of the United States rather than the people of the United States, because my questions were not hypotheticals. They are the things you have done during your tenure. And according to a lawsuit filed last week by long-term FBI agents, you fired former acting director Brian Driscoll. He had served with the Bureau for nearly 20 years, earned a Medal of Honor, Medal of Valor for bravery during the dangerous ISIS raid, and had a wealth of crisis response experience and led the FBI's critical incident response group. When the Trump administrations interviewed Mr. Driscoll for that role, they interrogated him about his political leanings and who he voted for in the last 5 elections. Questions Mr. Driscoll refused to answer because those types of questions impermissibly politicized the FBI. You also fired Steve Jensen, who served the FBI for nearly 2 decades and ran critical terrorism, counterintelligence, and organized crime operations, whom you once described as embodying what the American public demands of the FBI. But he was fired because he took part in investigating crimes committed on January 6th. And Trump's MAGA base lambasted you online for keeping him at the FBI. so he's no longer at the FBI. You also fired a decorated combat veteran with decades of experience in the Bureau, Special Agent Walter Jardia, because he worked on the investigation into the Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election and helped investigate Trump's ally, Peter Navarro. Director Patel, it is very clear that you have flunked your own test. You've put saving your job, which I actually believe you were being honest about during your confirmation hearings, over doing what's right for the FBI and the American people. That is not adherence to the law. Thank you, and I yield back.
Time of the gentleladies.
When Senator Deborah Ross methodically dismantled Kash Patel's defense, she wasn't just asking questions. She was exposing how the FBI had been weaponized for political purposes under the guise of law enforcement neutrality. Ross began with Patel's own confirmation hearing promises, where he swore under oath there would be no politicization at the FBI, and personnel decisions would be based solely on performance and adherence to law. This wasn't rhetorical flourish, it was evidence preservation, establishing the baseline against which to measure his actual conduct. The genius of Ross's approach was turning Patel's hypothetical denials into concrete contradictions. When she asked whether hiring agents from only one political party would constitute politicization, Patel deflected by claiming the FBI doesn't ask about political affiliations. But Ross had receipts. She immediately pivoted to the Driscoll lawsuit, where FBI personnel were indeed asked about their voting history, exposing the gap between Patel's public claims and private practices. This pattern revealed systematic institutional capture. When Ross detailed the firing of Brian Driscoll, a decorated 20-year veteran who earned a Medal of Valor during ISIS operations, she was documenting the purging of institutional memory for political compliance. Driscoll's case is particularly telling because of what triggered his removal. During his interview for a leadership role, Trump administration officials interrogated him about his political leanings and voting history across 5 elections. When Driscoll refused to answer these impermissible questions, recognizing them as politicization of law enforcement, he was marked for removal. This creates a chilling precedent where institutional integrity becomes grounds for termination. Steve Jensen's firing further illustrates this systematic approach. Once described by Patel as embodying what the American public demands of the FBI, Jensen was terminated for participating in January 6 investigations, after Trump's base criticized Patel online. This shows how external political pressure was directly converted into personnel decisions. Perhaps most damaging was Ross's revelation about Special Agent Walter Jardia's termination. A decorated combat veteran with decades of bureau experience was fired specifically for working on Russian interference investigations in cases involving Trump ally Peter Navarro. This wasn't about performance or misconduct. It was about case assignments that produced politically inconvenient results. These firings reveal 3 destructive patterns. First, they establish political loyalty tests, where career professionals must choose between institutional integrity and job security. Second, they create a chilling effect where remaining agents avoid politically sensitive cases to protect their careers. Third, they signal to foreign adversaries and domestic criminals that certain investigations will face internal resistance. The broader institutional damage extends beyond individual careers. When experienced counterterrorism, counterintelligence, and organized crime experts are removed for political reasons, you lose decades of operational knowledge and investigative expertise. These skills can't be quickly replaced, creating genuine national security vulnerabilities. Ross's closing statement crystallized the stakes. She told Patel directly that he had flunked his own test, prioritizing his job security over the FBI's mission and the American people's safety. This wasn't partisan theater. It was institutional diagnosis. When law enforcement becomes a tool of political retribution rather than equal justice, the rule of law itself becomes negotiable. What makes this particularly dangerous is the precedent it establishes for future administrations. If political interrogation of FBI personnel becomes normalized, if case assignments become grounds for termination, If institutional expertise can be purged for political compliance, then the FBI ceases to function as an independent law enforcement agency and becomes an instrument of whoever holds power. The consequences reach beyond Washington. When citizens lose confidence that law enforcement operates fairly regardless of political connections, cooperation with investigations declines. When foreign partners question whether sensitive intelligence will be handled professionally or politically, information sharing suffers. When career professionals see their colleagues fired for doing their jobs, institutional morale and effectiveness collapse. Ross's questioning exposed these dangers through documented actions, not speculation. She showed how Patel's promises of neutrality became cover for systematic politicization, how performance-based claims masked retribution against institutional independence. This wasn't just oversight, it was an autopsy of institutional integrity, conducted while the patient was still breathing but clearly in distress.